Coming to you live from Browns headquarters in Berea, Ohio, this is Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Here are your hosts, Beau Bishop and Nathan Zegura.
You guys good?
Yep.
All right, you are up.
All right, let's do it live on a Thursday edition of Cleveland Browns Daily. I am merely Beau. He is the great Z. How you doing, pal?
Doing very well here on this Thursday, and after we went off the air yesterday, indeed it became official.
You don't say.
No, John Johnson. Well, look, the league year started at 4 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
League
year.
There's a very legitimate reason. John Johnson III, Tack McKinley, both to the Browns. There are reports today the Browns are hosting free agent linebacker Anthony Walker, former fifth-round pick out of Northwestern, who played for the Colts and was a 3-year starter there. That seems to me like he would be kind of the B.J. Goodson style of a replacement to give him another kind of semi-veteran body in that linebacker room. But the other news that has come out late last night are reported re-signings, and that is there would be the return of Hollywood Higgins, the return of Malcolm Smith, and potentially the return of JoJo Natson, who never got to play for the Browns last year, but could be, kick returner and obviously have some juice with his speed. We're talking about speed. He was a guy that they were counting on to provide some of that speed on jet sweeps, etc. JoJo Natson, it looks like all three reportedly back on one-year deals, and of course the team will confirm that when they are able to. But I think the big one, Hollywood, and you saw, Baker Mayfield say, what are we doing, Hig? And Hollywood saying, let's run it back. And reports coming out that it's a one-year deal to bring Hollywood Higgins back to the Cleveland Browns. And a great move there, obviously. And I think Hollywood is going to be kind of like John Johnson, that he took a discount to be a part of what's going on here with the Browns because the guy played like a number 2 receiver in this league, and I love that he is back and wants to be a part of what's being built here.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I am distracted at the moment because I see Jarvis Landry tweeting a Juice times Jordan announcement that Jarvis Landry is going to be a Jordan athlete, it appears. There's a minute-long video on here that's quite exciting of him playing golf with MJ, wearing some fantastic Jumpman apparel. It looks like Jarvis is going to be a Jordan athlete here. This is very exciting.
Well, the guy's
a nice little ad.
He's only the best, so it makes sense that he would
how cool is that?
He would be wearing the Goats brand there. And listen, Jordan he'll give you a chance early, but you have got to earn your keep there. And so for Jarvis Landry, for the love of the game, the passion.
That's cool.
You love that. Just like Mike, see you on the other end. I love this. What a video. Yeah, I'm pumped about this video, too.
Isn't that a great video? The video itself was amazing. While I'm excited about everything that happened yesterday, that happened at the same time as you were saying all that. But, boy, it's an attention getter. Let's start with Hig. And let's start with, I think what we can say very plainly and clearly, based on what we have done in free agency, is that your head coach, Kevin Stefanski, is very comfortable with the offensive talent on this team and is very comfortable with the notion of, let me have a year with these guys. The one thing that we had talked about was speed, and somebody to take the top off. Don't think that's going to come in free agency. It may come in the draft. You could take a second round, third round. You could do something there. Maybe you could get somebody that fills that void.
Can you?
Well,
let's look at your receivers.
I don't know.
Real quick. Odell,
do the math. Let's do the math quickly.
Odell, Jarvis, Hollywood, Donovan Peoples-Jones. You tendered Kaderil Hodge, which means it is highly likely he will be back, even though he's more of a special teams guy. That's 5. JoJo Natson has reportedly signed a one-year deal. He would have been your 6th guy last year. I mean, his spot is certainly not guaranteed, but the notion, to me at least, it feels like the notion of going early in the draft at receiver. Now, that might be where the Browns zig and say, you know what, we'll have this guy cheap for a year. We'll get him into certain packages, and then next year, obviously, he has a chance to have his role really expand, whoever that person would be, an early pick at wide receiver, to get that speed in here with Nats and then being insurance if it doesn't match up with the way we want to draft it. But all of a sudden, between the signing of Malcolm Smith and the re-signing of Malcolm Smith reported, the re-signing of Hollywood Higgins, the tendering of Hodge, the re-signing of JoJo Natson, wide receiver and linebacker don't really feel to me like massive priorities at this point. To your point, we're going to run it back on offense. if we're only playing 2 linebackers, we've got 4 right now that we feel pretty good about it, and potentially, with Phillip Walker coming in, a 3-year starter for a very good defense in Indianapolis, you'd be set at linebacker. That says, and in my mind now where I'm going, the glaring, like sirens, cornerback. That's, to me, I think all of a sudden corner is in play at the end of the first round. And it's got
I think corner and defensive end.
Yeah.
I think you will be, first round, second round. That'll be the way that goes is corner and defensive end as we sit right now. Now you could still add to that. There's still a lot of good corners out there. And I guess when I said what I was saying about the wide receivers, if somebody falls in your lap who runs 4.29, if you love them, you take them in the second round and you just deal with the consequences of it. But it is the overwhelming theme is, I think, Kevin Stefanski likes his offense.
Yep.
And he likes the personnel, and he wants to see another year of it. And I am thrilled that Hig is back. Hig is a friend of this program. He used to come on the show a lot. We've done a lot of remotes at Discount Drug Mart with Hig, and he's brought the dog. This is a guy that we know and like a great deal and has been around a long time. But if you would have told me before free agency who's more likely to come back, Hig or Money Mitch, I would have said Money Mitch over Hig. If you say that they were the same. Now, the money's not the same for the two. It's more for Money Mitch, clearly. Yep. But I would have thought that would have been the way that it went. I'm thrilled that Hig is back. Thrilled. And would have loved to have Money, too, because we love him. But that would have been something, if you would have said, Beau, pick one, who do you think would be back? I would have said Money Mitch at the start of free agency rather than Hig.
I think that the Browns got, as we talked about at the end of yesterday's show, that the fact that the wide receiver market was moving significantly more slowly than people had anticipated, I thought every day that it went on was a day that it seemed more likely Hig would be back. Look, the coaching staff wanted him back. Your quarterback absolutely wanted him back. And Hollywood wanted to be back. He doesn't sign this deal unless he wants to be back. This is not the only option for Hollywood Higgins. He was coveted around the NFL. He wanted to be back and to be a part of what should be a very special 2021 season. The Browns made it work. Look, he is, as we talked about, some of these guys, and we're starting to see it now. It took a few days, but now we're starting to get to the one-year deals, a chance to cash in next year. And Hollywood, I think, is very much in that boat. Depending on how things shake out at wide receiver for the Browns, there's a chance Hollywood may play his entire career with the Browns. But it took a couple of one-year deals to keep it to the point where, okay, maybe we have a launch off where it just becomes accepted that Hollywood Higgins is a stud for this team. When you average 16.2 yards a catch, when you're over 12 yards a target, when you're over 2 yards per route run, you're a stud. You're amongst the most efficient wide receivers in the NFL. What was it, 38, 39 catchable balls thrown his way? He only did not come up with one of those. He was as efficient as anybody. He is, for his quarterback, he is where he is supposed to be when he is supposed to be there. He blocks. He did everything. And this was a guy who was inactive to start the season. He was inactive.
Well, that's what I was going to say. He's a guy that the last 2 years up until the injury to Odell, it was puzzling that he wasn't on the field. That's what was weird, because there was a connection with Baker from the year before that was apparent, and the year before he gets in the doghouse with Freddie and can't get out of it. He re-signs, he comes back, has to switch numbers, all of those things. Comes back, he's inactive early, stays engaged, benefits tremendously, and we benefit tremendously by having him. And that chemistry that he has with Baker Mayfield, you can't coach it. You either have that or you don't.
Correct. And beyond that, you have to think of this receiving core and think about the fact that not only was Hollywood inactive to start the season, so was Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Right.
Inactive to start the season, and then these guys go out and play massive roles. And I think, Hollywood Higgins, that is just, it's fantastic because he wanted it. I think this city wanted it. Earlier this offseason, he said, just put a contract in front of me, I will sign it. That kind of loyalty is special, and that kind of bond that he clearly has with his quarterback, with this organization, with this city.
Yep.
It's a special thing. And for the Browns to be able to run back their offense now completely, because the other thing that happened at 4 o'clock yesterday, which was featured the Chief giving one of the greatest gifts ever with Leonardo DiCaprio giving Wolf of Wall Street the little toast right there. Just spectacular. And that means we are running it back.
I think it's Gatsby.
Gatsby, I'm sorry. You're right, Gatsby.
Yeah, Gatsby, yeah.
We're running it back on offense. Quarterbacks, Baker, Case Keenum. Running backs.
Yes.
Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Andy Janovitz, Dearness Johnson. Wide receivers now. Odell, Jarvis, Hollywood, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Tight ends, Hoop, Njoku, Harrison Bryant, stiff arm Steve, starting offensive line, the same. Kendall Lamb right now, the only departure from your offensive side. That's it. That's the list.
It is clear that your coach said to your general manager, "I'm good. I'm good. These are my guys." Wait, do we get new water bottles? What are you holding up there? You just took a
We've
drink
had
of
them
it.
for a little while here. The new Deja Blue Browns.
Oh, I've never seen
Browns
that
water bottle.
labeling.
Well,
it's how long it's been.
It is new since I've been back this part of the year. But let's have a little bit of fun because we're talking about gifts coming back to the Browns. I got something here for you, as I told you that I would, even though you were mad and said you were hurt. Oh, that's right.
No, not mad, hurt. Oh, look at it. It's gorgeous.
That's for you in
gorgeous.
a bag, ready to be maybe hand-delivered. I don't know.
What a job.
You know when you'll get this? When I have transformative turkey or we get on the golf course. That's when you'll get this. And
pool time, maybe? A little pool time?
A little pool time for sure. Sure. Then this comes from Cirque in Terrebonne, Oregon. And I'm not going to open today, but it says on the side, "Lights away, boys, lights away."
Oh, boy.
And on this side, it says the Spite-Light. So I will not open this until Gibbe returns. But this is here now.
Oh, boy.
I love our listeners. Cirque, you're a legend.
The best.
You're a legend. Legend.
What a great human. So we kind of went over everything there in terms of who's coming in and where we sit. The Anthony Walker visit as well, reportedly, that's going on today. Larry Ogunjobi does leave. And so Larry, who has been on the program a lot, and I'll never forget, how he's one of those guys that when I first started working for the team, he was one of the first guys we had in on an interview, and he was such a nice guy to talk to. And I remember how gracious he was with my boys at camp. Like he spent a lot of time with them signing balls and that type of stuff, and it was a cool thing to see. And so he goes down the road to Cincinnati. His time here as a Brown is done.
It is, and definitely sad to see Larry go. It is a business, and he, his story is great. A guy who, at one point, his parents said, "You got to get off this couch. You got to get in shape." He was severely overweight, and he takes that, runs with it, and turns himself into a professional athlete. The first player ever drafted in the NFL from Charlotte. First one, as they revived their football program.
Yeah, it's incredible.
He's the first one, and there have been others that have followed in his footsteps. He is a pretty remarkable story. He is a great guy. He has an affinity for astronomy and aliens and things that I am also into, which I think is a wonderful thing. But just a good guy, a generous guy, always generous with his time. And I really am going to miss him as well. An excellent guy. I'm not surprised that he ended up with the Cincinnati Bengals. Why? He'd always played pretty darn well against the Cincinnati Bengals, number one. Number two, Geno Atkins might be his best friend in the league. Early in his career, Atkins became a mentor to him. And so I'm not surprised that he is going down there to Cincinnati where Geno Atkins was the guy. And I don't know what his status is for this year. I know he finished last year on injured reserve, but I believe he's still under contract with the Bengals as of now.
He is. A lot of people thought he would be a cut candidate, and it hasn't happened yet.
Right. So I think that could have certainly played a role into that. So it's going to be funny in 2021 in the interior of the defensive lines. They're going to have Ogunjobi. We're going to have Billings. And that's basically a little bit of a swap there. So hate to see him go. Again, to me, it's part of who we are becoming. And that when you look at our defensive tackle depth chart, Larry probably would have been third or fourth on that depth chart this year with the ascension of Jordan Elliott, with the return of Billings. And you can't, unfortunately, when you have all the guys you've got to pay, it's hard to pay for depth like that. And so that's why Money Mitch gets priced out of here. It's why a guy like Larry Ogunjobi, unfortunately, gets priced out of here. And so we wish, certainly Larry the best. He was always a very generous, very kind guest on our program.
He absolutely was. And those are your OBM Hot Topics. Ohio Business Machines, preferred copier provider, your Cleveland Browns. They have all the X's and O's for your office. You can call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. Coming up next, we'll take a look at where we stand numbers-wise now on the defensive line, at linebacker, at corner, at safety. Who else could be in the mix going forward? Are there more holes that need to be filled? Certainly on that side of the ball there are. We will get to some of that coming up next. At the bottom of the hour, Jason Lockenfor, the great Jason Lockenfor, CBS Sports, will join us with a big picture view of where we stand in free agency, often running on a Thursday edition of Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Do you guys have Lockenforo's phone number?
He's going to call you.
Jason,
he's going to call in.
He's calling me.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, you guys ready?
Z, don't forget to mute.
You guys good?
Yeah, we're
Okay, you are up.
If your game plan for this season includes buying or selling a home, Howard Hanna Real Estate Services has you covered. Visit howardhanna.com/GoBrowns today to learn more. Okay, so we know where we are in terms of who we've signed, who's coming, who's going. Let's take a look at where we stand now. Let's just kind of go layer by layer with the defense here, Z, and let's just start at defensive line in general. You're probably pretty good where you are in the middle. You'll need some more warm bodies in there. But at defensive end, you still need a guy, I think. Don't you? Don't you think that's a position that's kind of out there? Now, that can be the draft. That could still be in free agency on a veteran on a cheap price. But that seems to be something that's still necessary.
Yeah, and so you look at that room right now as it were constructed on your roster. You have got Myles Garrett on one side. Takk McKinley probably penciled in right now as your other starter. And then you've got Porter Gustin, Curtis Weaver, and some young guys, Joe Johnson, Cameron Malveaux, behind them. I do think a veteran presence still could be added into that room. Middle of your defensive line, your top three is set: Sheldon Richardson, Billings, and then behind them you've got Elliott. But you need more defensive tackles as well to get into the mix. I mean, that could be a cheap veteran, or that could be, Vincent Taylor departing via free agency, Larry Ogunjobi departing via free agency. That could come from a cheap veteran, or that could come from the draft. Linebacker, you've got your three young studs. You've got Malcolm Smith reportedly back, along with Phillips, Taki, Mack Wilson. You're going to need a couple more guys in there, though. Philip Walker obviously having the visit today. That wouldn't surprise me if he ends up coming in here, because that's going to be a lot of your special teams guys in addition to playing. And Tay Davis, a former special teams ace, gone. Tavier Thomas, special teams ace, gone. And I wonder if the JoJo Natson is Mike Prefer saying, hey, I need somebody who's a dedicated team.
I got to have somebody.
Dedicated teams guy around, because they have really gone out and the Browns special teams in terms of the core guys, Davis, Elijah Lee, who's an unrestricted free agent, Davis, Elijah Lee, and Tavier Thomas all gone. Kadarius Hodge, really your only returning special teams ace. So linebacker, I think once we get to that 5, you're going to need another one, but that could be, a late draft pick or an undrafted free agent that comes in. Montrell Meander is still here that they like. So I think that there could be some room there to bring somebody else in, because you're going to need 6 of those on the roster just for special teams, I think, ultimately. When you get to now the defensive backfield, safety, I think you feel great. Grant, Ronnie, John Johnson, who has landed here in Cleveland, according to his Instagram.
Yes.
Redwine. You've got Moffitt and Benton, who are undrafted free agents, and Moffitt got some, was able to be on the main roster for a few games. Bent was on the main roster for a game. That, to me, that room is done. You're 3. You got first, second, third string. You're good. You're safe.
I mean, honestly, if Grant Delpit is healthy, and there's no reason to believe he won't be, if he is, that room went from a weakness to a strength in an offseason.
One of the strengths anybody's got at that position
of the defense
in the league. Yes, without question.
Correct.
So then we get to cornerback. And here's where I think we've got issues. I think we have issues right now as we're constructed. We got Denzel Ward. You've got Greedy, who didn't play at all last year. Mitch is down with the Houston Texans. Kevin Johnson, still a free agent. MJ Stewart is back, and again, played well at times, up and down. Former second-rounder, though. Some pedigree, knows the defense, inside-outside versatility. Tavier Thomas, gone. He is now a Houston Texan, like seemingly everybody who was on our team at one point.
So many of our guys are. Yeah.
It's wild. A.J. Green, who spent all of last year on the practice squad. And then Brian Allen, who was signed late in the year, who had 3 years, 17 games in the league with Pittsburgh, the Niners, and now obviously with the Browns. So right now, if you went into it, you've got 1, 2, 3, you have 5 corners here in the building, period.
Yeah.
You need a lot more than that, which is why you could get by this season with your defensive ends being what they are today. You cannot get by with what your cornerbacks are today.
Can't play this way.
You can't. And so you need, I think, 2. I think you need an outside and an inside. We heard Adoree Jackson mentioned yesterday by Ben Albright. Garyon Conley's name, and I'm curious to get your take on him. His name has been bandied about, a former first-round pick that has never really lived up to his potential in the league. Traded midseason last year.
I mean, you loved him. Yeah, you loved him at Ohio State. And part of it, just a ridiculously talented secondary at Ohio State, and so much so that the Raiders drafted him in the first round. He's a local kid, too, so there's that part of it. Yeah, I mean, I think he would certainly have the inside-outside versatility to be able to play both. Just hasn't. It would fit the pedigree though, like a glove. First rounder, high end talent. The age would fit. I mean, there's a lot to like about that with Garyon Conley from that perspective.
Right. So what do you make of what he could be, for the Browns, if you were to look at it that way?
I think you would view him as a lottery ticket. If he could, much like it would fit what Andrew Berry likes to do. I mean, he's a big time talent. It didn't always connect. Although he did make plays, it's not quite like the Eli Apple situation, which is another highly drafted Ohio State corner that never really worked out. I don't think Gary Connolly's that. I think I still think he has some nice upside. The athletic profile's there, and I think that's an interesting guy to kick the tires on. I don't think, though, I will say this, Z, I don't think you're in a position where you would say you sign somebody like Gary Connolly and go, oh, yeah, we're good at corner.
No.
To your point earlier, we've got a lot to do there, I think. I mean, I think you need a veteran who can play and can be relied upon. Like, think of him. To me, if I'm Andrew Berry, I would think of the corner that I sign in free agency almost as my number 2 corner. You have to remember, like, with Greedy, it's nerve. Like, he's cleared, thank goodness. You saw the piece by Mary Kay. That's awesome. But I mean, that's something where you say, geez, that could go south at any time. So to me, they need a number 2 corner, and then now that can come draft, that can come free agency. But I think it's a bigger need there than to say if you sign Gary and Connolly, go, yeah, we're good there. I think I would view it a lot like the Takk McKinley thing, where it's a lottery ticket. High-end talent, if it works, great, you've won the lottery. If not, no big deal. It's not that much of a loss. But I don't think it's a counted-on thing.
No, and look, he didn't play in 2020. He didn't see the field in 2020. Off-season arthroscopic surgery on his ankle, didn't recover. He was darn good for the Texans, who gave up a third-round pick to get him that second half of the 2019 season. 44% completions allowed, a rating of 73.6 when targeted, 13 pass breakups he had in basically half of a season. So he played very well. They were counting on him last year, and they never got him on the field. So you need to assess his health first and foremost. But, no, you're right. I don't think if you got him, you're done. You have a guy who could become pretty good, and I would say pretty darn productive and have a real opportunity out there and give you a real nice pedigree. And, again, it's upside, and you hope that, between he and McKinley and some of these guys, that's who ends up hitting for you. But that's what we're gonna have to see. I don't think you're done there. I do think a corner is a big need. And I think if you got Conley, you could still put a pretty early draft pick into that room as well.
Yeah, I agree. We'll get Jason LaCanfora's take on this. He will join us coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
You guys ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, you guys are up.
Elk and Elk Serious Lawyers for serious injuries. Call 1-800-ELK Ohio today for a free case review. Elk and Elk is a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. Jason Lockenford had something come up, and so he will not be able to join us here as we had promised before the break. But no worries. Before we get into, I want to do a corner and defensive end. Who else is available with you in a second? But I wanted to know if you saw this story. Are you aware of? Have you heard the name Marilyn Hartman? Does that name mean anything to you?
No.
It shouldn't. Most likely wouldn't, unless you actually read this story, which is a pretty insane story. So she is a 69-year-old woman who was arrested for attempting to sneak onto a flight at O'Hare International on Tuesday. Okay? It is the 22nd time that she has been arrested for trying to sneak onto a flight or otherwise violating orders to stay away from airports since 2014.
What?
And on one instance, and on several instances, gotten through security, and on one instance got onto a plane that was flying to Europe without a ticket.
How? Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Outrageous.
She's like a female DiCaprio in Catch Me If You Can.
Right. Let me mute myself here so I don't get that echo on our FaceTime. That's a pretty outrageous story.
It's a pretty outrageous story. And she's clearly addicted to the thrill of this, and I would just suggest that perhaps the penalty isn't severe enough.
I don't understand how she continues to get into airports. I mean, you got to give her some credit for that. They know her game. They know what her vice is, what her thrill of choice is, and she continues to pull it off.
So O'Hare's big, so that starts it. So that's probably the first way that you're able to get in the airports. The thing that's amazing to me is through the security part. I mean, I don't care what type of TSA, the pre thing that I always have or clear. No matter what, like every time you go to one of those things, you got to show an ID. Have you ever been since you've been flying since 9/11? Have you ever not had to show ID and ticket?
No.
Like how you got through that is a stunning accomplishment. I guess one time she did it. It was she picked up a ticket off the ground that had already been used and went through. It's amazing.
This kind of stuff is disturbing to me. I don't enjoy.
I don't have a problem with that statement.
Yeah, this is disturbing to me. This should
it's a little
not
unnerving.
Yeah, it is. It's quite unnerving, is what it is.
Yes.
It should not be so easy to do.
No. 22nd time. Unbelievable vice. All right, so we kind of went over where we stood defensively on this team at this point in free agency. And there is some stuff that needs to be sorted out, to say the least, on this side of the ball. We know that Anthony Walker, well, we don't know. Reportedly, Anthony Walker is in the building, the linebacker, of course, who started the last couple of years for the Colts. We know that he fits the profile, 25 years old out of Northwestern. Not necessarily a high pick, but a high producer with the Colts and would certainly fill the B.J. Goodson role. And I would assume if that happens, if somebody like that happens, you're done at linebacker. So it really is just two positions you're kind of circling in on, my friend, and it's corner and it's defensive end. And let's just go through, if we will, who's left out there at those two positions that could come in here and provide immediate help? Because I think in both instances you need immediate help.
Yeah, I would say so. So we'll start with the cornerback position. Adoree Jackson is probably the best player on the market. Only 25 years old, supremely talented. I don't understand it. To me, that would be a home run signing. Now, the Browns are getting to the point where we're going to have to, if we want to still bring in some high-profile guys with what we have to pay our draft picks, we're going to have to do some restructuring or some caponomics to push some money down the line. But Adoree Jackson is out there. Brian Poole is out there. He was the Jets' top cornerback last year, an excellent slot corner, probably the best still available. He would make a lot of sense for the Cleveland Browns. You look at Troy Hill, one of the better slot cornerbacks in the NFL last year. He's 30. He knows John Johnson. They played together with the Rams. He's from Youngstown. He's got 330 tattooed on his forearm. He has inside-outside versatility, but more of a slot makes sense. K'Wan Williams, again, excellent slot corner, former Cleveland Brown. He is somebody that the Browns could be looking at. And those are kind of the names that you see. There are others out there, Desmond Trufant, A.J. Bouye, Darquez Dennard, talented guys, Probably their best football is behind them, certainly in the case of Bouye and Desmond Trufant. But those are some corners you could look at. Kevin Johnson remains out there. Richard Sherman remains out there. Obviously, familiarity with Joe Woods. Same with K'Wan Williams. They both played for Woods with the 49ers. Those are the guys that I think maybe you're looking at. Desmond King, Garyon Conley. We talked about his name. Those are likely to be guys on the radar. There are other veterans, Mackenzie Alexander, who played slot for the Bengals last year. He is well known by our staff, and I don't know if that works in his favor or if that doesn't work in his favor. And so there are still plenty of guys out there at that cornerback position. Corn Elder
Let me ask you
first
this.
of all, a great name. It sounds like a character in Banshee. Corn Elder would fit right in. He's a restricted free agent for the Panthers. Only 26, but a good slot corner as well.
Just in the middle of season 3 of that, first 2 seasons are just spectacular. The shark has been jumped a little bit in the 3rd season. It's a little loose. It's hanging on
by
about
a thread.
By a thread. It's one of it happens in these shows, and you could see it in a lot of them. I know even in The Sopranos, which was a great show, where when they don't know where they're ending,
right,
you meander a little bit, and then probably once when it says, okay, this is your final season. So you write a show, it's a hit, and you go, okay, well, we got room for a second show for sure. Here's the second season. That's easy. Okay, but now what do we know what the end game is, but what are we going to waste time on for a while? And that's what I think Banshee's in the 3rd season as I'm rewatching it. Is it's kind of in the waste time mode, and this is what separates the great series from the good, really good series.
Yep.
Is you have to the ones that can stay on focus and keep the stories going throughout, and that's kind of where we are. It seems it's kind of meandering in the 3rd season. Still wildly entertaining, but the storylines are not quite as strong as they were in the early seasons. Are you finding the same thing is true of what's the show you're watching, The Highlander? Is that still
Outlander?
Still got you peaked?
No, it's still
Outlander.
good.
Yeah,
it's good. It's good. We're about to wrap
still
up
in there.
season 2, and each season's 13 episodes, an hour long.
Oh, okay.
And it's cool because you know what they're trying to do, where they're trying to get, where they're trying to go, and what the characters' motivations are very clearly defined. I think it's very good, very good.
Still good.
It
Okay.
satisfies a little. It's got little Thrones feel to it in some sense because it's set in the Highlands of Scotland and the 1700s, so you get some that kind of a feel, and it's pretty cool. And I'm learning some history about it as well, the Jacobite Rebellion, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, our punter, the Scottish Hammer, named for the main character Jamie from the books. So, what more do you want?
Go wrong there.
What more do you want, folks?
Not much. What I was going to ask you as you were going through the corners that are available,
there's still a ton.
And I think
a ton.
There's still a ton. There is still a ton. I think a number that is really you can't ignore it, and I'm certain that our front office knows it, is aware of it, and it's the number 12. And the number 12 represents the amount of games, unfortunately, that Greedy Williams has played in 2 years. So that is why when you look at this now and you go over, like you talked about Adoree Jackson, yeah, sign me up. Sign me up, because I think you need somebody. To me, you need I don't want to be on. It's just tough when you talk about a nerve issue and you're talking about 12 games in 2 years. I mean, we love Greedy Williams, love him. Hopefully, he's able to play and go. It just is something that hasn't happened at this point in his career, and a nerve thing gives me concern. I know the team is a concern. It was awesome to hear him talk to Mary Kay, as excited he was to get back, and he's a full go and ready to go. But if I am putting together this team, I would want somebody opposite Denzel. If it's Greedy, great, it's gravy. But I would almost think you almost need to have somebody on that level signed, whether in the draft or in free agency, before you start next season. That's on the level of Greedy when healthy.
Well, it's interesting that you use the number 12 because that's the number of games Denzel Ward started in each of his 3 seasons in the NFL.
Well, so that buttresses my point.
So that's great use of buttress. 25%. You need 4 starts at his position. You needed, on average now, at 12 out of 32, you've needed 10 starts at the other position. We don't have a starting nickel on our roster right now. That's 16. Right. So we're talking about 30 starts that are up for grabs in our cornerback room if history just repeats itself. Now, let's say you get 12 out of Greedy as well. 12-12. That's the only thing he's shown us in his healthy year. So that's 8 starts outside that are needed, and we still need 16 in the slot. That's still 24 starting games out of a cornerback that is either M.J. Stewart, Robert Jackson, A.J. Green, Brian Allen are not currently on our roster. And I think we know that we maybe need to do a little bit better, at least based on 2020, than the names that we threw out there. Now, M.J. Stewart is probably the one most ready, but I thought Robert Jackson, who was cut earlier in a procedural move and then brought back, and when the lights were on bright week 17 and in the playoffs, struggled with the Steelers. A.J. Green didn't play defense at all. Brian Allen's been in the league.
And we know they liked him.
Play.
They paid him a ton as a free agent. They know we know that we paid A.J. Green a lot as a free agent, so they know they liked him. He's been in the building a year, but is he ready for prime time? Because I guess the point of this all, folks, is we need somebody ready for prime time, and we really probably need 2 ready for prime time, is the way I would view it, based on his history of the position.
Right, and that is where Kevin Johnson, a former first-round pick who had started many games in his career, that's where Money Mitch, who stepped in for you and played very, very well, that's why you are missing them in a major way at this moment. And so you do need to come up with, now you could invest a very good draft asset into it. I do also think there are going to be times when only 2 corners are on the field and Grant Delpit is playing in the slot for you. But again, we haven't seen Grant, and you and I could not be the bigger fans of Grant, but we need to see him on the field running around to know that he can be the Grant Delpit he was prior to the Achilles injury. So that we've done a lot. I think McKinley, his upside opposite Miles, is excellent. Could we get by with that defensive end rotation right now? Sure. Do you want somebody else in there? Yeah. You want another defensive tackle? Yeah. You need some bodies, in at linebacker to help bring your young guys along, play teams. Safety, I think you're set. Offense, you're pretty much set. You're looking for another tackle to replace Kendall Lamb.
Yeah.
But corner, I don't think you are set. I'm concerned now about our cornerbacks as it stands today.
I think it's right to be. Because I think you need 2 dudes. I don't think you just need 2 guys. I think you need 2 dudes. You need 2 guys who can play. And it's going to be important that those, that's free agency and draft or whatever the combination is. That seems to be the most likely. You need 2 guys in that room who can come in and play, and you can count on them because just the availability hasn't been there at the position. Let's do defensive end. If there's still a couple of paths there, I'm with you. If you got to go with what you have and it's who we have and a first or second round pick at defensive end, fine. That's fine. That's more than fine. We'll be fine with that. But if there is still that other path of a veteran guy on a prove it or come chase a ring with us situation, who jumps out to you that would seem to be a good fit for this defense?
And that's the question, and I think it's a good question. The guys that I think you could have been really interested in aren't necessarily out there. So your question now becomes, do we think Olivier Vernon could be ready for the second half of the season, that we can get by with Tack and the youngsters, and then he's able to come in and give us the kind of play that he did down the stretch? Do we believe that's even possible? That's a name. Jadeveon Clowney always remains a name. We know we had interest in him before. That's a name. Carlos Dunlop, I'm not getting the vibe that Carlos Dunlop's going to be a Brown. Melvin Ingram, more of a on 2 feet pass rusher. I don't know that that's necessarily a scheme fit for the Browns, even though I do like him. So who could it be? Clowney, Aldon Smith at 31.
That's an interesting name. Yeah.
I think he's an interesting 5 sacks last year, played well against the run. Kerry Hyder, who Joe Woods would have knowledge of, Chris Kiffin would certainly have knowledge of, who's a veteran who was with the Niners and had 8.5 sacks in relief of all the injuries they had up front. Everson Griffin still out there at 33, 6 sacks in 2020. If you said, okay, you come in here on a limited snap count, could he give you something? So those names seem to be the ones, right? I mean, there are tons of other guys as you go down and down and down the list, but
in terms of like impact guys, though, those are the guys. Clowney would be the one that would have the biggest name and all of that. But he could very easily be somebody who does what he did last year and gets healthy and waits until 2 weeks before camp and comes into a team.
Yes.
I mean, that's something that could happen there as well. So in terms of somebody being here for the OTAs and the off season and all of that, that wouldn't be Jadeveon Clowney, and that's my guess is that it wouldn't be. And so that's kind of where you're at. Aldon Smith is the guy that kind of piques my interest just because of he still had the propensity last year at times to be dominant. And there's not as much wear on the tires either with him.
No. And again, I think it comes down to scheme fit. It comes down to finances. It comes down to be able to get him in. And I don't know what that's going to ultimately end up looking like. I think we all know there needs to be somebody else. You get down into names that are significant more down, but a Trent Murphy, for example, who can maybe give you some quality snaps here and there. Vinny Curry was a name that the Browns were linked to at a point last year, linked pretty significantly, and then he ended up not coming.
Quite significantly linked.
Do you see if Ziggy Ansah's got anything left in the tank? So there are names out there. We'll see. I do think there needs to be some type of an addition, obviously, to that room. You would think you would want some type of veteran steadying force, and maybe it ends up being, as I said at the beginning, maybe it ends up being OV in the middle of the season. Maybe it's just something very, very minor. I think Takk McKinley's going to be given a shot, certainly to compete, to play meaningful snaps.
Yeah.
But I would imagine, ideally, you want somebody else competing with him. And I don't know that Porter Gustin or Curtis Weaver, who we haven't seen any of and is more at this point becoming, the legend like the mighty Casey at the bat without having played a snap here.
Really is.
I don't know if we're ready to just, hand him a role.
No, I wouldn't think so. But you're kind of, as you are now, you're kind of headed towards that. And you're, I think what's interesting, and maybe we'll do this in the second hour of the program, is kind of, rethink the mock drafting, because we've had a lot of the mock drafting that we've taken a look at was done before free agency. And much of it, I viewed it through the prism of we would go and be aggressive at defensive end opposite Miles, is that would be job one. Let's go do that, and then secondary, primarily safety after that. It didn't go that way, so that hole is still out there, and then a second hole has opened, and that's at corner. And those are the spots that are now priorities. And so when you rethink the draft, what we know about the defensive end market in this draft is, no, there's not a Miles, there's not a Nick Bosa, there's not a Joey Bosa, there's not a Chase Young. Those type of players aren't in this draft at defensive end, certainly not where we will be picking. But there are some really quality guys who people could have rated as somewhere between the 10th and 15th best player in this draft, who, because of teams chasing quarterbacks or chasing offensive linemen, could fall to us. Kwity Paye is a name that I keep bringing up out of Michigan, which is a guy who could fall. And now all of a sudden you address that right there. One thing that we haven't looked at too much is corner. We've talked a lot about safety in the pre-draft process in the mocks of a safety and a playmaker back there to play that three safety look that we know Joe Woods want. Well, we addressed that in free agency with big time in John Johnson. So now that's not a priority. So now you say, okay, corner and defensive end right now seems to be the market we're in. And in corner, it's draft and, I think, free agency. And defensive end, it might just be draft might be where you're at this point.
Right, and those are – look, there's still a long way to go in free agency. When we went through the names of corners,
sure,
there are so many good corners still available. So
corner's better than D-end.
Definitely, at this point.
By a wide margin.
By a wide margin, yes. Guys that you would say, okay, come in, start, and you could be here now and for a few years. By a wide margin. So I do think, and I wonder, where does a guy like Zaven Collins fit in? We'd seen Trevon Moehrig, the safety out of TCU. I think that's off the table, even though I just saw a mock draft that was just put out, and it still had us take him and said, I don't care about that they added John Johnson. I mean, I don't think we can play John Johnson, Moehrig, Ronnie Harrison, and Delpit all together all the time.
No,
I mean,
you're not playing four safeties.
That seems like a little bit of overkill to me. So, again, there are more corners. I think that will be addressed sooner. Defensive end could be, as you said, a veteran. It could also be. I think that's definitely got to be considered something in play at 26. And I would imagine with the return of Hollywood, I don't know that wide receiver is something that would be looked at in the first round.
We talked about that too.
But we're getting to a point where, and listen, free agency is for need, the draft is for value and for talent. I think that we would maybe take a redundant player in the draft if we thought that was by far the best player. I don't think we're going to take away and we're going to go away from, we're not going to just try to pigeonhole something because we say, oh, well, this is what we need. This is where we're going to draft. If that's the case, I would see us either moving down if it didn't match up for us and acquiring more assets that perhaps we can turn into players. And the Browns, we put out $28 million so far in guaranteed money, to the free agents that we've signed so far. This is from Sharp Football, who's citing Spot Track. So we're in the middle of the league in terms of so far guarantees handed out to players. But it's funny, we keep talking about defensive end, and you wonder, boy, maybe we gave up a little too early on a guy like Emmanuel Ogbah, who was traded, if you remember, for Eric Murray, who had a one-year stint here, and Ogbah goes on 9 sacks last year, 6 the year before as a Super Bowl champion for the Kansas City Chiefs. And Carl Nassib was here, who was cut at the very end, and for a guy that we claimed from the Vikings who never appeared in a game for us, was cut, I think, a week later. Nassib, had back-to-back 6-sack seasons. You can find those guys, though. And I think that's part of the thinking is we've got such a great player in Miles. If we can get on the other side, attack McKinley, who certainly has a ton of pedigree, and then another guy who's going to chip in four sacks, boy, now we're right where we need to be. Corner, though, I don't think we can talk ourselves into being like, okay, we're where we need to be.
No. That is the issue at corner. Coming up at the top of the hour, Jake Burns will join us. Does a great job doing the film for the OBR. He will join us, and we will do an in-depth in terms of what John Johnson can bring to this defense. And here's a hint. It's a lot. It's coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
You guys are down. Is he calling it?
50, 10, 5, touchdown, Nick Chubb!
850 ESPN Cleveland, WKNR Cleveland.
Alrighty. Muting, Coach.
Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
I got Jake. You guys good?
Yep.
All right, you are up.
Welcome back in. Second hour, Cleveland Browns Daily here on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Beau Bishop here for my friends at Weather Seal Home Services. Need a new roof replacement? Would you like to replace your roof for the last time? Guessing you would. And it's the benefit of choosing a metal roof from Weather Seal. Metal roof technology, materials, styles, and colors improve significantly, making them beautiful. Here's the best part, guys. Nearly indestructible. And how about this? Affordable, especially with Weather Seal. Plus, with the new metal roof, Weather Seal includes 6-inch gutter upgrade, up to 7 years, 0 interest financing on that, guys. Call my guys, 877-351-SEAL, or visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com. Again, that's 877-351-SEAL, or visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com. And with that, we head out on the Fifth Third Money Line for a visit with our good buddy Jake Burns on a little breakdown. Jake, man, incredible job you did breaking down John Johnson and his impact that I saw this week once he was signed. From Joe Woods' perspective, John Johnson in the fold means what most?
Well, I mean, I think he adds an element to your defense of just like a really, really good football player. I think I tried to note this, that the way the NBA has gone away from labeling positions, small forward, power forward, those things, just kind of wings and stuff like that, like wing, post, and guard. Like, he's just a good player. He's a almost borderline positionless player. I think that it's tough to draw comparisons. I think John Johnson's kind of been hit out on the West Coast, so mainstream hasn't necessarily caught on to how good he is. And I think the closest comparison, there's some really good safeties, obviously, we know in the league, maybe like Minka Fitzpatrick's more of a single high center fielder type, and Jamal Adams is more of a linebacker in the box, come down, play, rush the passer. We all know his sack numbers. I think the closest comparison for him is a Tyrann Mathieu. I think he's a guy who can play all over the field. And, kind of the same way, the Badger plays for Kansas City and he has in Houston and Arizona before that. Like, he can play deep coverage. He can come down and play the slot man-to-man. He's lined up wide on tight ends when they split outside. He's played a traditional linebacker. Brandon Staley, the defensive coordinator last year for the Rams, who's taken over in L.A., has done he kind of noted that they had linebacker troubles in L.A., and he wanted to specifically have him help alleviate that. So if you watch last year, he played a good number of snaps in the box as almost a traditional will linebacker at times. So he does everything. He can line up on the edge and set the edge and run support. He can, like I said, he can play curl flat to hook and zone coverages. Like, he covers tight ends and has done a really nice job in his career in that division with the likes of the best tight end in the game, probably in George Kittle. He's done great there. So what you're getting is just a really good football player who lends a ton of flexibility. He does not have a weakness in his game, in my opinion. He can play run support effectively, will come up and thump in the box, and is not afraid to fill a gap in run fits. He will hit you. He will play downhill, but he can also play in retreat mode. He can get back in coverage. He can play a deep half. He did not play a ton of center fielder single high coverage, but he can when he's asked to, and he's made plays that I tried to highlight in tape doing that too when asked to do that. So, I think his role would be doing a disservice to what Joe Woods can do with him to kind of peg him in just one spot. I think they'll do a lot of what Wade Phillips did with him and Staley did with him in L.A. and let him do a bunch of different things and give him opportunities to play that rover and roam position where he can turn loose the football instincts that have made him one of the best safeties, probably the best hidden safety in the NFL. Hopefully he gets on the mainstream stage here in Cleveland on the East Coast a little bit more and can solidify his name. But he's just a really good football player.
Jake, how great is it, by the way, that we think playing for the Browns could put somebody on the main stage in the football world? I'm not sure that was something we were saying a few years ago, but it's great to be saying it now. How do you envision, Joe Woods? We know he wants to have Delpit. He wants to have Harrison and Johnson now on the field together a lot. I get a sense that, they think Delpit can be kind of that avenger who can, play in the slot. He can blitz. Harrison more in the box, but also can play some of that single high, and that Johnson would be more of the traditional free safety. How do you see the best fits for those guys in this defense?
here's a good way to put it. I think as a quarterback, you step up to the line of scrimmage, you try to identify coverage based on alignment a lot. You try to say, okay, they have too high here, but they probably like to roll John Johnson down and play him in the rover spot. They like to do this, that, or the other based on where certain personnel positions are lined up. With these three guys, they can all do different things, and there's no ineptitude in one guy's. I mean, there are parts of games where I think Grant Delpit's probably a better center fielder safety than he is maybe a box safety, but he can do it. His LSU tape is riddled with that ability. The same way Ronnie Harrison's probably better playing closer to the line of scrimmage than he is playing deep, but we saw last year he can do it. The best thing here is you don't have to necessarily pigeonhole these guys into one role. Like, you can put, based on, you could even go series to series, like, hey, we want you to play strong here. We're going to have you play this big nickel, whatever name you want to have for that. Some people call it a rover, a money position, viper. It's just based on defensive playbook. But, hey, we're going to have you bump to viper this possession because we really need to eliminate Mark Andrews here in this situation because they like to go to him here, there, or the other. They can do that stuff now. They have true coverage deception based on who's in at safety. Teams don't know where those guys are always lining up, and they don't really lose anything by mixing and matching where those guys line up. In an ideal world, you'd play him at strong safety, John Johnson, as my son comes running out here. You'd play John Johnson at strong safety, and then you probably play Harrison closer to the box in that big nickel position, and then play Grant at free. But they can mix and match all of these guys, and the beautiful part of it is the deception and not worrying about coverage in the back half, because you have guys who are capable of doing not only zone coverage but putting themselves in man with guys who can play that rover or roam position or deep center field without losing very much. So, the biggest thing you want as a defense is the flexibility to line guys up in different places and not lose anything in run or pass. They now have that ability.
And that is really all that a defensive coordinator can have now, right, is some deception. And Joe Woods will have that, as you mentioned. All three of these guys can do a lot of the same things. Tell us what you saw on film study, because we know Harrison's a good blitzer. We know Delpit was an excellent blitzer, and his ability to get to the quarterback. And Joe Woods likes to blitz off the edge with those safeties opposite Myles Garrett a lot. How was Johnson as a blitzer in your tape study? And I know he was very stout against the run and a very sure tackler.
Ironically, they didn't blitz him much, so he didn't get a ton of pressures or sacks. I don't know that he's had a sack in his career, thinking back on it. He did pressure the quarterback a little bit when they sent him off the edge, but that's an element of his game that they have not unlocked. So, much like I mentioned the name Jamal Adams earlier, I think he can do that stuff. I certainly think there's an element to his game that is he's shifty. He's not the fastest flatline runner. I think he ran in the 4.6s at the combine, but he's got good enough hips to be able to shift, get through a gap, and get where he needs to be at the right time in the right place. So I don't have a ton of film on him blitzing, but I'm sure he would tell you that is something that he is able to do and something that he would like to do a little bit more. And maybe it's just because the Rams didn't totally feel comfortable doing that with him because they needed him in the secondary. So with the Browns' safety flexibility now, they obviously can lend sending him forward a little bit more. So that's a part of his game that I think can be unlocked. And, you can also feel a little bit more comfortable sending Grant and sending Ronnie, and then knowing that, hey, we're still able to lock up the center field position. Because we all loved Andrew Sendejo as a player, but he was playing out of position. It's not a secret. Like, Sendejo struggled, and that's just because he had to fill a role that they didn't necessarily see needing to be filled, and it just worked out that way. If you put Sendejo in a different role, he probably has a better season and gets less scrutiny. But now they have guys, I think, if you get Delpit back healthy, and obviously John coming in healthy, guys that are built for that role. And that's where you see a defensive coordinator being more comfortable being aggressive because he's not concerned about guys being out of position in the back half of his coverage. You can get up, play press man because, hey, I'm not worried about the middle of the field being left open with one quick move because somebody gets beat near the line of scrimmage. Like, you just feel more comfortable. And when you get more comfortable, you can play more deceptive looks. You can do more creative things. You can send creative pressures. And that's the biggest thing they needed to shore up. I've been kind of preaching, and I know you guys probably have too, like, they need to get better up front. They need to get another edge rusher. We're going to talk about tack. They probably still want to add at the outside edge rushing position, but they had to get coverage better. And they just had to improve it. And getting Greedy back is important, but you needed a safety that could really change your defense. And we think Grant can do that. We got to see him get healthy. I think the sky's the limit for him. But you're going out and getting a guy who's proven in that element, has proven he can do the number of – that's what makes the safety tape so hard to break down is I spent till 5 a.m. that day looking at a crazy number of snaps because they do so many different things. And just kept watching John Johnson's tape, and he he does so many different things well that it's just a great football player. You can't always say that about safeties. A lot of guys are pigeonholed into a role. He's not a role. He's whatever you want him to do, tell him, and he'll do it. That's the kind of guy he is on the football field.
Yeah, I'm just looking through.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say real quickly, and then please go. I was going to say, looking at his kind of snaps by position last year, he was a free safety about 50% of the time, 45% of the time, box safety about 40% of the time, slot corner the other, whatever would be left, 10, 15% of the time. So totally versatile with the Rams and will be so with the Browns as well.
Yeah, certainly. And that brings us to the next question before we get into tack, Jake, is if we are going to see the three of them out there a lot, and that is the wish, and we should note that it's official now, Malcolm Smith has signed back on with the Cleveland Browns at linebacker. That's the position group that I'm curious about, because you saw this in draft boards and in free agency, all of this, and Nathan and I kind of downplayed it. We just didn't think it would be a big position of need for this front office. What traits, if you're going to play three safeties, what traits are required from the linebacker position? If you're only going to be playing two of them, what traits are required for that to work?
Well, you got to have a guy who's versatile in terms of playing run and pass. I mean, if you're going to play, and there were times with the Rams, which if you're looking at the Rams defense, it was a fun study because they do a lot of interesting things. And, I think it's pretty well documented now. I know you guys at the Cleveland Browns wrote a write-up on things to know about John, and he was their green dot guy. And I thought Brandon Staley had a great comment about that, which in modern-day football, safeties are almost becoming this hybrid position all the time, to the point that having a guy who's your leader, and we know, and if you study, and I encourage everybody to go listen to the mic'd up episodes that are out there of John Johnson last year. I think the Redskins game and the Packers game he's mic'd up. Just listen to the communication he has, the respect of his teammates, the way he leads sort of vocally and emphatically. It's great, and it's going to be such a great counterbalance to Myles Garrett's sort of cerebral, quiet leadership up front, the way he leads sort of by example. That John will be a great counterbalance there. And I think that you get to the point where you play two linebackers, and what they have to be able to do is be respectable in coverage. But if you're playing more guys who are coverage identifiers, first and foremost, more safeties, more nickel corners, whatever, you have to be able to have linebackers who can play a run fit and be able to handle taking on somebody. So that's a part of what B.J. Goodson was really good at last year. We'll see if B.J. makes his way back. Not totally sure, but you have to be able to use those guys in run fits and guys who can really run too. And that's what's interesting to me or exciting to me about Jacob Phillips. I know Jacob dealt with knee injuries last year, and obviously it was so hard for rookies in general because they lost training camp, and then he week one he goes down with the knee, comes back, goes down with it again. He missed so many practice reps and all that. But if you go back and watch Week 17 with Jacob Phillips, that guy's playing at a different speed than everybody. Had 8 run stops that impacted the game, like true plays that negated the offense from gaining anything of importance. So, that's a great game. So if you go back and watch him when he kind of gets everything to click playing the Mike position, I think they're really high on him. Yes. And he's a perfect modern example of a guy who plays fast. He's got a lot of things to learn about processing what's going on in front of him sometimes. But you need those guys who can play run fits, but can also, especially in this division, be able to run sideline to sideline, because that's extremely important. Can you run with Lamar Jackson laterally? Can you run with Tyreek Hill and make a play against McCole Hardman? Those guys who can run. So it's really important that, A, they can run, but they can also play run fits, because, if you're bringing more smaller guys onto the field, by nature they're going to have to be able to thump in between the tackles and take that away. But with where the game is going, you need your modern linebackers, and a lot like Malcolm Smith proved last year. Can they run? Can they get out in space and have a coverage feel, but also be respectable and run fit? So I think Malcolm Smith coming back is a great addition. I'm excited about where Jacob Phillips goes. We saw progress from Sione Takitaki last year, and obviously Mack Wilson brings a run game element too. So good group. I think they can still expand on it.
Yeah, Philip Walker reportedly in the building today, according to Adam Schefter, visiting the Browns, 3-year starter for the Colts, who had a run-stop percentage that was very good last year, to your point right there. Talking with Jake Burns, breaking it down here on the Browns. And, all right, Jake, let's talk tack real quickly. We don't think that they're done in that room, but, Tack McKinley, again, that fits that profile. Former first-round pick, a lot of upside, 13 sacks his first 2 years in Atlanta. What can we expect, and what would be a good return for the Browns from Tack McKinley this year?
Well, you're right. It's a low value, high play lottery ticket, because it's a 1-year deal. Who obviously is not far removed from having the respect of organizations to be a first-round pick. And, whatever happened at the end of his tenure in Atlanta is between Tack and the Falcons, and the Browns, I'm sure, have vetted that whole thing and what happened he had a groin injury, and there was a disconnect between his practicing. I don't know. It's not for me to really to talk about much, but there was a disconnect that obviously led to them wanting to trade him and then letting him go. And the medicals that came back between teams claiming him, there was something going on there. The hope is that first and foremost he's fully healthy. Because if he's fully healthy, he's a guy who can align, as a wide nine edge rusher who can really get after the quarterback in different ways. If he plays with leverage, he's got a pretty solid bend. If he plays with leverage, he can be surprising speed to power guy sometimes. And when his bend is right and when he's fully healthy and the legs are working, he can be a good player and can be an effective number two if he's isolated. I think between what happened with Vic Beasley early in his career there in Atlanta, he started hot and faded. Seems like Atlanta under Dan Quinn had a little bit of an issue developing guys over the long haul. There could be something there. I mean, they could unlock some. The hope is that you get basically a Shaquille Barrett clone where, a guy who didn't produce the way everyone expected in Denver, he goes to Tampa Bay and it unlocks something. He gets 19 sacks. I'm not saying he's a 19-sack guy, but, when you're playing opposite Myles Garrett, you're not going to get a ton of attention. Sheldon Richardson, too. You're not going to get a myriad of double teams. So he has an opportunity if his frame of mind is right. He comes in really good shape. And, like you said, there probably is a veteran that they bring in or they draft somebody too, keeping an eye on the long term at that role. But he's going to have an opportunity at just 25 going into age 26 or kind of right around that range to capitalize on that role. And if he can get to, I think his second year in the league, he had 8 sacks and a good number of pressures. He had 120 total quarterback pressures over his first 3 years. So there's something there. It's just can we get this guy to lock in? Can we get his body right? And if so, the talent is there to be a really solid number 2 player in the NFL. And if you unlock that next year, you have your foot in the door to sign him long term and, at a good price. And the upside is just through the roof, in my opinion. So I'm really happy they made that deal. If it fails, and if it fails, then it is the way it is, and you took a shot. But the upside type of thing is what you want there for the age and the overall potential.
Yeah, it's the lottery ticket effect that you're going for there if you're Andrew Berry, and it's a high payoff potentially. Jake Burns, our guest, film analyst, football writer at the OBR, joining us on the Fifth Third Money Line. Are you comfortable then with where it sounds like, and Nathan and I talked about this too, that you're comfortable with where you are in the defensive line, and then so that opens up the question. Now we feel like you're going to add another veteran or draft and all of that, but corner's a little bit different, and with Terrence Mitchell being gone and heading to Houston. And now you kind of look at where you are in that cornerback room, Jake, and you say, boy, this probably needs to be addressed. What do you think Andrew Berry ought to be looking for at that position, and how aggressive should he be in the pursuit of adding people to that room?
Well, I'll preface it by saying I'm not totally comfortable. I'm not correcting you or anything, but I'm not totally comfortable with what they have up front. I think they need to keep adding promising young players up there. I mean, Jordan Elliott and Porter Gustin, guys we saw make an impact last year, and Andrew Billings coming back. But I think they got to keep adding, and their draft position will help there. But as far as like the status quo of the D-line versus the secondary, absolutely think secondary has to keep getting better. So, at corner, I think Greedy is excited to come back. The Browns are excited to have him back. We got to see him take some hits. Can that shoulder withstand the grind of the NFL? We got to see it. We're all pulling for him. It'd be great because he's a good football player. Got to see it. The same with Denzel. 3 years in, he is a special corner, and they'll hopefully be able to sign him to a big second contract. It's all there for him, but he hasn't played a full 16 games, in his first 3 years each year. So, you got to have depth, and you got to raise the basement of your secondary to being an average group. So I think you got to get the safety. They've done a nice job with safety, but they got to keep adding talent at corner. I think that those two guys we talked about, Greedy and Denzel, are very good football players, and can do a couple different things that are really important to the position, especially playing man in that mirror technique, walk down, play in front of someone's face. So, I think those guys are good, but you got to really take into account the depth thing because it was so tested last year, as you guys all know. So, adding another outside corner in free agency would be a wise move to make. There are still some fun veteran names that are out there, like a Dory Jackson and some others. I think Gary Conley's an interesting prospect, a former Buckeye. There are guys out there that they can add for cheap there that could help with the depth and raise the basement of that group and potentially challenge for a role. And then slot corner options like Brian Poole are certainly there, and Troy Hill, former Ram, also there, a guy with Youngstown connection. So there are options that they're to raise the basement of that group. Now there's a really good cornerback draft too at both slot and outside. So I hope they add a couple more, maybe even 3 guys there, so that they can really kind of improve the depth, so that they don't go into any late regular season games or playoff games with, total injury concerns. So I think that the guys they have there between Greedy and Denzel are really talented, and if they play and can stay healthy for extended periods of time, and like we all hope they can, they're good enough. But they got to keep adding, as you got to keep adding depth, you got to keep adding as many guys there for long-term potential fit. So I hope they keep adding corners. I think that in the NFL, coverage is so important, being able to play different coverages and have guys who can walk down. And as we all know, we watched that Kansas City game, play man-to-man tight coverage is what's so challenging to defeat. So I hope they're able to do that. And they have a great opportunity through, cheaper free agency names here at the end and the draft to do that.
Who are some of the guys? Because we were going through the corners in hour one. There's still a ton of them out there. Slot corners like Poole, even Troy Hill with the Rams, John Johnson would know, K'Wan Williams, who played here. Dory Jackson is now on the market, which is a shocker to me. But who are some of the names that either you think would be good fits or that you're hearing could be good fits for the Browns?
Well, you named them there. I think Brian Poole really did a good job with the Jets, anchored a pretty tough secondary there with the Jets, pulling off a pretty solid coverage grade in the slot. As we know, playing the slot cornerback position is not an easy position to play in the NFL, and especially if you don't have great safety support all the time or great outside corners. And he was able to anchor that spot. So Brian Poole has been a name of interest for a while. I'm not sure we're on the phone. Maybe he landed somewhere in this time, but he's great interest. And Troy Hill is approaching 30, but one of the best yards per snap guy in the slot last year. Could be a product of guys like John Johnson being around him and Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald up front, but the production is the production, and he could come pretty cheap too. So, we saw the experiment with Kevin Johnson last year, and they're certainly going to play, more 3 safety looks this year. But when they need a slot corner, a guy who can cover teams that play a lot of 11 personnel, they need somebody who can run with those quicker wide receivers in the slot, like the Cole Beasleys of the world, or when they put Tyreek Hill or McCole Hardman in the slot, or any of these teams, especially Cincinnati, might be putting together a pretty good wide receiver group too. So you have to have some speed there too at times. So I've always thought that the nickel market and free agency was really an affordable position that was overlooked price point wise. So it would be a good thing, in my opinion, to go out and get a guy in that market where the market kind of can allow you to get a good player for cheap, because it's tough to draft a nickel corner and feel good about it, because it's probably one of the hardest positions for a player to come in and start and make an impact right away, because you have to come in and you're getting used to the NFL, and in the slot you don't have the benefit of the sideline to help you in coverage, pushing guys outside. So you're dealing with guys who have an immense amount of speed and agility, more so than you're used to in college. They have what's called a two-way go all the time. They can go inside or outside, so you can't cheat. And also, hey, we need you to fill run support against these really big linemen, fullbacks, tight ends, and these really big running backs coming at you too. So it's a challenging position, one of, if not the most challenging defensive position. So while there have been examples of rookies who come in and done well, there's not. I don't love leaning on that thing too. So there's other veterans out there, even in I'd say in the cheaper market, like Nickel Roby-Coleman's a veteran who's been around the block for a while, is still out there too. So a lot of good options there. Outside guys, it was slim pickings to start. We've seen Griffin and William Jackson go to places, and some other guys like Ronald Darby have disappeared. But the guy who I keep going back to is the ideal fit for the cheap, and a guy who would be looking to, in a place he's comfortable, having grown up around the area and launch his career, is Garyon Conley. And Garyon was, I think, I could be wrong here, but I think he had the first interception of Baker Mayfield in Oakland in 2018. Took it back for a pick six. We know him from his Ohio State days. He's closely connected with Denzel. There's a connection there, and he's got a good skill set and has been solid even when he went to Houston. Not great NFL production yet, but a guy who could be, like I said, you get him in the right scheme and he's comfortable and could have a really nice bounce back and be a good player. So he's a guy of my own. Dory Jackson too, but Dory is having an injury issue his last 2 years too. And what's his price point? What does he feel like he's worth? Is he interested in coming up north to Cleveland? We'll see. But yeah, there's still, I know we're a few days in, and people are a little disappointed by the sheer number of signings, but there's the good thing about this front office is they're not overpaying for anybody. They won't do it. They have a price point. You're going to hit it, or we're going to let you go. And they're very sharp. They're very understanding of positional value, and they're going to take advantage of the patient game and get guys at the right value. So it'll come just like it did last year. They'll get the right guys at the right price point and be in good shape when they go into the draft.
Jake, real quick, last one. We'll get you out of here on this. You had mentioned the corner depth and talent, and you think about guys who could be available, when you pick, whether that's first round, second. Who are some guys that you like in that draft? I know I'm asking you to prognosticate ahead, but that you think might be nice fits. I mean, the first guy I think about, if you get like third round guy who had terrible tape last year, Sean Wade at Ohio State, but he was outside. But when he was inside in the previous years, he was great. He's got decent size. He's got some of those things. That might be somebody who could be a bargain in the third round.
Yeah, Sean's an interesting guy because some people even project him as a safety based on his skill set too. He's a guy that you can get interested in late third round into the fourth round. I mean, I can give you a few for each round. I'm not the draft guru. I can't.
Sure, of course not.
The amount of time I try to break down the Browns is tough, but there are really good names like J.C. Horn. The NFL Bloodlines is a guy at 26 from South Carolina, really of interest. Greg Newsome. The Northwestern corner is a very, very talented guy who can run really well. Santi Samuel Jr., another NFL bloodline guy from Florida State, is in that realm of late one type territory where you could maybe, even if you traded down, get him early second. Melifonwu, the kid from Syracuse, the younger brother of Obi, is an interesting, really big, long cornerback. Kind of all of those outside corner traits from Syracuse. He's an interesting guy, maybe even in round 2 at pick 59, that I think a lot of people will talk about. And then as you get later on, there's some interesting guys like Trill Williams, another Syracuse guy, is on Bruce Feldman's freaks list. He seems like a third, fourth round guy that they could go get. The thing is, I'd say the thing about the corner class is like every round there's somebody really interesting. Shakur Brown from Michigan State's an interesting mid-round projection player, and God, the list is so long. I'm probably going to get off the phone with you and want to talk about 5 more guys. But, yeah, I think that what aligns is you need corners. You want to keep expanding your group, both corner and maybe even get another safety. And in this draft, it's the positions you want to be after because there's guys at the beginning, middle, and end who are all very, very interesting players, very deep at those positions.
Jake, it was excellent as always. Thank you for your time, my friend.
Hey, thanks, guys. Anytime.
All right, that is the great Jake Burns of the OBR joining us on the Fifth Third Money Line. A reminder, all guests who appear on Cleveland Browns Daily do so via the Fifth Third Money Line, Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns Daily a Fifth Third better. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Right.
You guys ready? You guys ready?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Let's take this up till about 48.
Okay.
You are up.
Obsessing over something like football can be a problem. If you're obsessing over gambling, it can be dangerous. Do something to take your mind off it. If you want some tips on what that could be, go to keepitfunohio.com for great ways to keep gambling fun. The NFL free agency, it was a mad rush, and it slowed down pretty dramatically here in the last couple of days. And you're seeing more and more of those short-term deals, those 2-year, 1-year deals. Kyle Van Noy today going back to New England, the linebacker who was there previously, who went to Miami. Patrick Peterson on a 1-year, $10 million deal with Minnesota to go up there and play. We saw Gerald Everett signed by the Seahawks, as well as Curtis Samuel. Pretty decent money on that one. 3 years, $34.5. Couple of the other ones that happened yesterday was Hassan Reddick. Again, there's that 1-year prove-it deal with Carolina.
Surprising.
A relatively young guy. Me too. The number on that was surprising. He's a young guy. That's surprising to me, certainly. Kyle Long as well, after a year of retirement back in, and Kansas City could benefit pretty greatly from that. Pretty big punch to the gut by his dad's former team. He visited the Raiders first, and then went to Kansas City to play there.
Well, yeah. Now they've got 2 new guards, Kyle Long, Joe Thuney, signing the 5-year contract worth $80 million for them. That was their big signing, as they kind of remake their, what you'd call their offensive line after letting a lot of guys go. I think the team that has been having one of the best off seasons thus far is the Washington football team. You bring in Fitzmagic. They keep Scherf on the franchise tag. You bring in William Jackson III, who a lot of people think was the best free agent corner available. And then you get Curtis Samuel. Yep. So now you're going to have Curtis Samuel along with Terry McLaurin and Logan Thomas and the running back Gibson that they got, who played so well last year.
Gibson was great last year.
This has the potential to be a darn good offense.
Sure does. It sure does. And they're in a position where, look, it's a bad division. The Giants are going nowhere. I think Philly is going nowhere. The Cowboys should be much improved, obviously, with Dak back, but you can make a run at it. And with Fitzmagic, you're going to be in everything, and they can now play the quarterback game if they want. If they want to, if Marcus Mariota ends up getting cut, you could bring him in to try to see if there's anything left there on kind of like the Tannehill thing. The other thing you could do is you could draft one if you wanted to with Washington, or you could wait a year and just roll with Fitzmagic. There's a lot of options for Washington. I love the Samuel move for them. I think he's a really nice – he's a Swiss Army knife. He can do a lot of things for you, and it allows a different kind of dimension to your offense. And I know him and McLaurin, I saw Terry posted yesterday, that they talked about that their freshman year of the dorms at Ohio State, and now it's coming to fruition. So I agree with you. I think they've done a really nice job in free agency.
Really, really good. Their defense is excellent. Getting that corner on the back, that's great. How about this one? Does this surprise you? New Raiders running back Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake going to the Raiders. $11 million over 2 years, 8.5 fully guaranteed. Don't they have Josh Jacobs?
They sure do.
Am I missing something there?
Dude, they traded Hudson yesterday after they were going to cut him, and then they traded him.
And
I don't understand that. And Gabe Jackson too. What are they doing?
I don't know. And they're about to cut Mariota. He says, rap sheet saying, wait, the Raiders have a running back in Josh Jacobs. Why, yes, that's true. John Gruden sees Kenyon Drake as a jack of all trades, a joker, as they say. He'll figure prominently in the passing game and is also close with Jacobs as well. Trading two starting offensive linemen so that you can pay a second running back seems insane to me. They run that very strange, the things that are done in that organization.
Yeah, I think so too. And their initial free agent class has just not panned out at all.
No.
Some of their picks I think are odd, and I guess you can do that when you have 10 years of job security and an owner who's not going to write a check for you not to coach. So I guess you can be a little more reckless, but no, I don't understand the plan for them at all. And I really didn't think they were that far off. They were, when we saw them last year coming into our game, they were playing at a pretty high level. And to go from that to kind of what's happened this year with them is pretty strange. I don't know that anything's happened in the AFC that would lead me to believe that there's any sort of power shift in free agency. I think Buffalo could end up having. There's a lot of smoke around them with Ertz. If they were able to pull that off, if Buffalo was able to pull that off, I mean that they're inching closer. If they're able to pull that Zach Ertz deal off, and a lot of people think that's where he ends up.
I would agree with that. They certainly are a team that is. I think they're very good. Ertz would give them that reliable weapon over the middle to complement what they've got on the outside. Now they replace basically John Brown with Emmanuel Sanders to go with Stephon Diggs and Beasley, and a lot of people have them drafting a Travis Etienne at the end of the first round to bolster that running game. Although I thought Singletary and Moss both played pretty well last year, and they've invested. That would be a second and a third. It's hard to imagine you draft a running back in the first 3 rounds 3 years in a row, but maybe they will. I don't know. The team that just seems to me that has gotten this free agency, I obviously like what we've done here and getting John Johnson, but we've been kind of, I would say, small players thus far. But I really think what has happened, the Jets certainly got better in bringing in Carl Lawson and Corey Davis. There's no question about that. We don't know who their quarterback is. That's a tough one. But I think you look right squarely at what's happened with the Washington football team. They've done a heck of a job, I think. A heck of a job. And I think the Chargers, getting their offensive line shored up. You trade Hunter Henry for Jared Cook. They also have Parnham, the young tight end there, so they can still do a lot of the things that they wanted to do in that respect. I don't think they've had that bad of a run. I think the team that has improved its chances of winning its division the most is the Washington football team, which ironically won their division a year ago. They are defending division champions, even though people forget that. But I think they have improved their situation the most in what will be most likely a more competitive NFC East with Dak back in the mix.
Yeah, and I think a couple things to keep an eye on, certainly here as the days and weeks pass here in free agency, is the wide receivers. And you think about Galladay, and right now, it seems like the Bengals are in on him and the Giants. You talk about Will Fuller. I mean, if somehow Will Fuller ends up in Green Bay, I mean, that could be a game changer for the Packers. And there's no real market for wide receivers. It's a very depleted market. And so you could get guys going to teams and just adding to teams that are already loaded on a short-term deal, a prove-it deal, and that would be a pretty big game changer if somebody, and Will obviously has to sit out the first game, but if you add him to what the Packers do, and you get somebody who takes the top off the defense, that transforms their offense quite a bit.
Immediately. Devontae Adams is one of the most dominant receivers in the NFL, period. But
right.
You add a field stretcher, and they've been able to get production out of guys like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Alan Lazard. Right. It doesn't matter because that's how good Aaron Rodgers is. But all of a sudden, if you were to have a true vertical threat like Will Fuller, I think that really, really changes things for that offense. And they've got to be considered. They were one game away last year. Or was that the NFC Championship that they played? Yeah, they were in the NFC Championship, wasn't it? Green Bay, Tampa Bay?
Yeah, at home. At home against Tampa Bay,
that little snafu at the end of the first half. That's a team, though, that I think that would make them pretty good. All they've done, by the way, this offseason is retain Aaron Jones. That's it. They've added nobody.
Right. Which surprises, because they took which again speaks to how incompetent their draft was the year before, because they drafted A.J. Dillon and they draft Jordan Love in the first round. Yeah. Can you imagine what so I thought as soon as they draft Dillon, well, okay, Jones is gone. So looking for a replacement there. But no, not. Jones stays, and they allow for, and so now you say to yourself, boy, what could they have done with some of those picks? And Dillon was fine down the stretch for them, but I don't know, it seems redundant.
They let Jamal Williams go. So Jamal Williams is now with the Lions joining DeAndre Swift there, and they decide now they've got Dillon on a rookie contract, and that probably makes them think, all right, we've got a pretty good player in Dillon on a rookie contract so that we can pay Aaron Jones for a few years and then maybe, Dillon takes over. But
yeah,
you're right. In terms of not doing anything that changed what you were able to put on the field with your first 2 picks and still to go to the NFC Championship game and have a real opportunity to win that game, that's a team that, if they can make that one little splash. And it's funny because you look at it and you say, well, offense wasn't the problem. Do you need to get better on offense? It wasn't the problem. But Will Fuller, I just think, makes them so much more dynamic and so much better.
It's just how dominant do you want to be offensively? And all of a sudden, if you have a burner with Rodgers and you have Fuller, that it just seems like a no-brainer. We'll see how it all shakes out. Still so much more to come. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
You guys are down.
I'll do this Kyle Rudolph, and then I'll talk to you for Larry.
Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
You guys ready?
Yep.
All right, got about 4 minutes. You are up.
All right, this from Art Stapleton in the last couple of minutes. The Giants have agreed to terms with tight end Kyle Rudolph. Yeah, you're on.
Thank you.
On a contract there, and they're in on Galladay as well, so doing their best to give Dan Dimes a little something to play with there with the Giants, my friend. And also monitoring, as this is our job. We monitor all activity. Monitoring the IG, and you have you found something from Larry O.
Yeah, Larry Ogunjobi said, just want to thank God first and foremost for an amazing journey these last 4 years. To see and be a part of this team's turnaround will always hold a special place in my heart. Want to thank my teammates, fans, the entire city of Cleveland, and the Browns organization for welcoming me with open arms and giving me the opportunity to continue my career as a professional. As one chapter closes, another one begins. Onward and upward. Larry Ogunjobi.
There you go.
There it is.
Yeah. That's the business of it.
That's part of it. That's the business of it. That's what ends up happening, and that's where you're at. Some other news from around the league: the Texans have released Brian Anger, who is a very good punter. He is a free agent now, And it looks like the Raiders are going to be releasing Marcus Mariota unless they can find a trade suitor for him. Guess what team has reached out and inquired about him? If you could take
Bears, Patriots?
The Patriots, yes.
Patriots, yeah. Do you think about that when you think about, so you got Mariota, Winston, Goff, Wentz, Haskins, Rosen. Who am I missing? I mean, some of those are first and second.
From recent, but if you could even go back to
picks.
Andrew Luck's out of the league. RG3 is, other than has been a backup for his whole career.
I'm just talking about with those. I mean, Luck's out because of injury,
Sure.
and I think RG3 because of injury was never the same. You're talking about in recent years, first and second overall picks in the draft, first round picks who are either out of the league, been traded, or trying to resuscitate what's left of their careers. I mean, it's such a different dynamic at that position in the league now than it was 20 years ago. You would never bail on a guy that quickly. Like, it's remarkable to me in retrospect, and I saw the Rams say the thank you to Jared Goff, and I understand getting Stafford, I get it, but, like, Goff was their guy. He quarterbacked him to a Super Bowl. They won the division twice. They were in the playoffs 4 times. Like, it's a pretty remarkable thing that you would bail on somebody who's 25, 26, who you picked number 1 overall. Now, Stafford, again, I like him. I like the upside. But it's still, like, I don't know that deal happens 20 years ago.
All right, hold on. Let me just blow your mind for a second about Jared Goff. Okay, Jared Goff, for his career, is 42-27 as a starter.
1 minute.
He's been to a Super Bowl, 64% completions. He's thrown 107 touchdowns, 55 interceptions, so 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Quarterback rating of 91.5. Gone.
Yeah.
Not good enough.
Gone. Yeah.
4 straight winning seasons as their quarterback. 4 straight.
Yeah. It just is a different way of viewing the quarterback position now in the league than it's been. And it's been trending this way, but this year with all of these guys, it's just been exacerbated a little bit. Hopefully tomorrow we'll have some introductions of our guys coming in. Tack and John Johnson. That would be very, very nice to be able to have those things. Until then, my friends, the next level is coming up next. Thanks for listening, everybody. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.
You guys are down. Great job.
You've been